Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be about the Ford Transit and the common areas which normally rust on the vehicle. Just a disclaimer, this is not to scare anyone from the Ford Transit. I'm merely showing you these points because I've been asked the question before. With a little bit of proper maintenance, you can prevent a lot of these issues. So if you know where the problems arise, then you'll know how to look after the vehicle. With a little bit of extra washing and going a little bit of an extra mile just to clean up certain areas will prevent a lot of these issues that you're going to see in the video today. Now I'll cover the front of the vehicle, which is the front A-pillars, the windscreen at the top over there, and also the front channel as well here, where I'm pulling out the rubber. Underneath there, you get a bit of rust, and also the windscreen at the bottom can rust. So now coming underneath, now we can see over here is where the fender is. This is where a lot of dirt can build up, and if it's not cleaned in time, so you normally have to get a water blaster or something similar there to clean up all the dirt. If that doesn't happen, moisture starts to build up there and it starts to eat away the paint and cause corrosion and rust. Looking in the door jamb, this is another area you can check as well. Now with the mirror removed, you can see a bit more clearly what I was showing you through the door. So if water accumulates and builds up excessively within this area, you'll find a lot of rust over here. And you'll see it in the next picture as well. That's that bottom channel over there is where the water should be coming out, but when it rusts, it basically gets sealed and the water has nowhere to go. Looking at the vehicle from the outside, you can normally see if the fenders are rusting. If you're looking at a motorhome, check between the front cabin and the rear of the motorhome body. On earlier models, the fenders rust extremely badly. Also on late models, if enough dirt builds up behind the mudguards, then that's the problem you have there as seen. Now we're moving on to the front cabin area. At the door sills, on the entrance steps of each door, under the rubber, a lot of dirt accumulates over here where your jack is stored, where your front step is. And if not cleaned on a regular basis, it causes the whole channel to basically rust in there. This is a good example of how badly they can rust. And then you basically have to cut the whole thing out and replace it. And if you leave it too long, you will get a lot of holes in the body. Can become a very expensive job. So cleanliness in this area is vital. Now coming to the doors, at the bottom here, this is a good example. This is a clean transit, and you can see the water channels are free and open on both sides. This is where the water drains, so it's important to clean this area as well. As you'll see next, that's a good example of why you should clean it, because a lot of rust can build up, as seen in this red transit. That's where water can also build up in the step area as well. So as I showed you on the other side, have a look underneath this rubber if you can, and check the bottom step as well, because they do tend to rust. All within there, if you can get a vacuum cleaner in there, remove as much dirt as you can. An air compressor with the air blower will be ideal to clean up this area. Remember to check this area when viewing a Ford Transit. This in combination with the front windscreen will give you a good indication is rusting or not. As you can see here, I just pulled out the rubber, but it's not too bad. That's fixable. A bit later on, you'll see a really bad example. So as you can see here, everything's pulled apart and you can see the rust on the floor cabin. Now this is all surface rust because generally the Ford Transits are actually built quite well. The floors are solid. The paint lacks a bit. Hence the reason why it rusts a little bit easier than other vans. But generally speaking, you'll also find this in a Fiat Ducato and a Mercedes Sprinter, Toyota Hiace if they're not looked after as well. When cleaning the cabin area, make sure to clean behind the seat. Move the seat forward. Also clean around where the battery is located and also where tools are located just in the front step. Here's another good example of a freshly pulled rubber. And you can see the whole entire bottom strip is completely rusted. So if you're looking at one of these vehicles, just lift up the front floor mat and just check if it's wet. If you own the vehicle as well, just check on a regular basis. Especially during winter, this area can get extremely damp and wet. Also, if the area around the windscreen and the A-pillar, where the mirrors are located, that area can also rust and allow water into the cabin. One of the signs where the carpet can get excessively wet as well. Also, as you can see here, the floor is completely soaked and it's wet. Also, there's normally a secondary battery located under the passenger seat. And as you can see there, when left unintended to, and especially if the gas tube is dislodged from the exit point of the vehicle, it causes corrosion due to the gases build up a lead acid battery. Cleaning your vehicle, make sure you clean this area here within the door jamb where the hinges are. Dirt and mud can accumulate there if the bottom fender liner is not in place. Also underneath here, as you can see at the front windscreen, under that trim over there, try and keep that as clean as possible. A lot of mold can build up there and that also speeds up the process of rust. Clean up as much as you can around the rubber seal. The more you clean it, the longer the vehicle will run without any issues. This is a good example of one that's rusted internally, where the windscreen will have to be pulled out. You'll see that later on. So now moving to the outside, here at this plastic trim that you have on the outside of your doors and your slide door, make sure you clean that as well, because a lot of mold builds up under there and it causes the door to rust. Also, the door, where the slide door where it slides on the channel on the outside, there as well, clean that whole top area as seen. Otherwise that can happen. Rust can start to form. Behind the railing, so a lot of dirt accumulates behind the railing, and if you don't clean it on a regular basis, you will cause a lot of rust at the back there, and it'll basically rot the inside. Moving on to the rear now and the roof. This is a good example of a clean Ford Transit where there's no rust on the top step. Now you'll see next, this is one that's a bad example where it's rusted quite badly, as you can see there. Also internally of the tail light, that's where it rusts, but I'll show you that a bit later. And looking at the top here, this one's already had the repairs done in the past, but it just re-rusted again because it's not been done properly. With that whole top area as well. And now moving on to the tail light, what I was talking about, around here, a lot of dirt built up there, and we can see it a bit clearer with this tail light out of the way. It rusts internally there as well, and I'll show you that when we go underneath, where it builds up from under the bumper. So this is where the mudguard sits, and a lot of mud and debris can accumulate here again. So just like the front, as I mentioned, make sure you water blast this area on a regular basis and dry it up. You will even have to just drill out that top trim piece, what I'm pulling at the moment. There's a lot of dirt can build up there as well, and then rust internally if this area is not cleaned as well. As seen here in the picture, if caught in time, you can treat this rust and fix it, but if not caught in time as this picture is, you'll have to just replace all the steel underneath there. This area was never cleaned on this Transit, hence the excessive rust in the rear sill area. The appropriate remedy is to actually cut this area out and replace the entire bit. Going to the rear part of the chassis, this is where the tow bar and the rear step is normally mounted. This area as well should be regularly cleaned, and if there's any missing bungs, just add it in. As seen in this picture, there's one that's missing. Sometimes when you get a tow bar installed, these are removed and not added back in, and they can cause a lot of issues later on, so just keep an eye on this. Moving back inside, see those holes there? Those also can cause problems if water and moisture is allowed to get in there. And also the roof at the top, where the seams are on the roof, if that's not sealed properly, and if water enters the unpainted area, that can cause rust as well. As we can see here, someone's made a provision at the top for an antenna, and that's rusting as well. So now we'll move on to the chassis and the subframe. So looking at the bottom here, they're not too bad on the Transits, and normally it's just surface rust, so if you treat it in time, you can save it, because it's just, like I said, surface rust, and it's all solid metal underneath anyways. So the common spots are here on the chassis rails. So like I said early on as well, you want to treat this. So here's another example of another vehicle. The subframe is quite rusty, but again, surface rust only. And there's your drain channel over there, so you'll see that a bit later on in the video as well. And again, that fender. So you can treat all this with the oil as seen. So that just protects it after all of the rust has been blasted off and cleaned. Otherwise you can coat the whole underneath of the vehicle with undercoat or underline or something similar. So over here, even on the chassis rails, this is a common problem with these Transits because the drain is located here on this side. and it normally gets dislodged or blocked with leaves or something similar, watch my video down in the description below. I covered this in detail about how the drain channel normally gets clogged and what the problem is. Blocked. I'll show you where that goes. So that drain there is near the master cylinder, and also where the injectors have a problem with that channel. That video is down in the description. It's the same video. The intercooler and the radiator support, that normally rusts quite a bit as well. Again, surface rust if you catch it in time. And here's looking at it from underneath. So in order to fix that, you normally have to remove the intercooler, secure the radiator at the top, and then pull that out and get that treated. So now I'll just show you an example. At the top, if you got rusting on your windscreen area, the only real way of fixing that is to actually remove the windscreen. And at this point, you'll find a lot more rust around the whole of the A-pillar and the whole windscreen surround. So you have to just grind it back, use something like Brunox to treat it, whatever areas that are rusted. And if any of the areas are really bad, they'll have to be cut out and replaced with proper metal, primered, resprayed, and then it's basically good to go for many more years. Even here on the top of the roof, this one was completely rusted. It had to be cut out physically and a new plate installed and treated properly. Some of these rust spots are also common on the Mercedes Sprinter, the Fiat Ducato, the Toyota Hiace. So it's not only the Ford Transit that suffers from these problems. So that's just something to keep in mind. And like I said, I'm merely showing you these points just so that you can look after the vehicle. It's partly true that some of the earlier Transits do rust a little bit more, especially the ones in Europe where they salt the roads in some parts of Europe. So if your roads are salted, you want to basically step up the cleaning process and you want to make sure that you do it on a more of a regular basis. Also, if you'd like another video similar to this but on the mechanical side and the common mechanical problems in the Transit, let me know in the comments and I'll try and get that out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please like and subscribe. And make sure to share this video around, as it will save a lot of people problems when it comes time to their MOTs or warrant of fitnesses or other vehicle checks around the world. Like I said earlier in the video, if you do look after your vehicle, you will prevent half of these issues and you won't have any large bills or anything similar